Okay, hello everyone. My name is Jessica Rodriguez. I'm the Industry Engagement and Outreach Officer for the Data Science Institute. Welcome today. Thank you so much for joining us. We are having an iCubed today, which stands for Institute, Industry, and Innovation. These seminars connect our industry affiliates to our students and the larger Columbia community to explore topics at the forefront of industry. We invite data scientists, engineers, or researchers from our affiliates to give a talk about recent projects or case studies. During these educational events, we encourage attendees to ask questions via the chat feature. Today, we are very fortunate to have 4 data scientists from Elsevier joining us. We have Anita Waard, VP of Research and Collaborations. We have Georgios. I might mispronounce this, so please correct me when we introduce everybody. Tsatsaronis. Tsatsaronis, thank you so much. Principal NLP scientist. We have Kinga Szarkowska, she's a data scientist, and Magdalena Mladenova, another data scientist at Elsevier. Today we have a wonderful panel and discussion that's going to be happening. Please feel free to drop any questions in the chat throughout the talk. And great, I hand it over to Elsevier. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Yeah, we put this team together on purpose with the most difficult to pronounce names, just to give Jessica a challenge. So thank you so much for everyone who joined. My name is Anita de Waard. I use she, her pronouns. I'm based in Vermont, but originally Dutch, hence the odd spelling of my last name. I'll be sharing my screen. We are here, as Jessica mentioned, with 4 people from Elsevier. I am a VP of Research Collaborations. We work on research collaborations. We have been very interested in working with Columbia for a long time, and I'll share a bit about that. My colleague, Tsatsaronis, as Jessica mentioned, VP Data Science Research Content Operations, and then we're very happy to have 2 actual data scientists with us who will introduce themselves further on in the talk. So without further ado, just to mention, I remember being at Columbia Data Science when David Marks, who at the time I was working for, gave a keynote for a research data symposium. And I think this was the time when Columbia started to work on research data. I will share these slides through Jessica with everyone, so you can click the link, but you can also just Google it. He gave a talk at the time on small data. And I remember being there, and there was a lot of buzz in the room and a lot of interest as Columbia was just embarking on a lot of its data science work. We then started working with the Columbia Data Science Initiative, but fast forward to 3 years ago when 2 other colleagues of mine gave a talk on semi-automated exploration and extraction of data in scientific tables. And the picture below, as you can tell, we were getting better at doing this video thing. You could actually see the speaker and the slides at the same time, which we couldn't get in 2013. This is Ron Daniel explaining what the biggest problem is. And so there are links to both of those presentations. So we've long been great fans of Columbia. We are also, we have an office in New York. And so we're on Park Avenue, which we share with LexisNexis. So we're always very interested in talking to people who are our neighbors. And of course, Columbia is an incredibly exciting university and place of research to be working with. So we're delighted to have you all here. I also wanted to mention that actually one of our data scientists, Jessica Cox, is a Columbia alum. And also I'll be working with a group of Columbia students on a project, and we have our first kickoff meeting this afternoon. So there are lots of links between Elsevier and Columbia. So today we have 3 agenda items. We'll start to talk a bit about what does Elsevier have to do with AI. Then we'll move into a few examples of Elsevier doing AI, and George will actually go into a bit of a deep dive on a particular AI research questions that we're working on, the Coleridge Initiative. And lastly, but very much not leastly, we will introduce our data scientists, or they will introduce themselves. They can tell a bit about what it's like to be a data scientist at Elsevier, and there will be ample opportunity for questions. So as Jessica mentioned, feel free to type your questions in the chat. If there's anything really urgent, feel free to bring it up and break in audio, and otherwise we'll just do our presentations and leave you plenty of time for questions at the end. So to begin with, what does Elsevier have to do with AI? And if we were in an actual room, I'd ask you to raise your hand if you've even ever heard of Elsevier. I hope you have, but perhaps you have not. But Elsevier is in fact, it's the largest science publisher. And I joined Elsevier in 1988 as a publisher in physics way back when. And at the time, our main concern was that there was a chance that what we were publishing on paper would move to an electronic platform. And actually, we were some of the earliest publishers to adopt. At the time, it was SGML, which turned into XML. So we were some of the earliest adopters of what then turned into semantic web technologies. But when of course, the history of our company is in publishing, and it's not just science publishing. So science publishing includes journals like Cell Press and a whole host of journals. I believe we have about 2,800 scientific journals that are all global in all domains of science. We also publish books, and we also publish fundamentals, or we publish databases, the Beilstein reaction database, for instance. So initially, we were, as a company, interested in getting people to read our content. We then had a shift, which happened, I would say, around the 90s, where we really were looking more into, now that all this content is available online, how do you search it? How do you find things? Our online platform is called Science Direct, where you have access to the content of all the journals. We also have a platform called Scopus, which is a database that allows you to trace citing and cited papers. So if you have a paper, you can see what other papers cited that paper. So you can see what research was done that was based on this. And you can also check all the citations. And it's also a way to look at, if you find a researcher, to see what they cited, to see if they were highly cited, by whom they were cited. And you can kind of track the development of a domain or a research group that way. A Clinical Key is an offering for clinicians who want to get the specific piece of content at the right moment. And Reaxis, as I mentioned, is a database of chemical reactions, where if you have a specific chemical compound, you can actually see that it is built out of other compounds and query that through the database. So that was, I would say, the Elsevier of the middle 90s, early 2000s. And since then, we've really been moving towards platforms with so-called actionable knowledge. So if you are a researcher, maybe you want to find a project, or maybe you want to find collaborators, or maybe you want to find a specific materials property that you want to use in your research. And on the right are a number of products that we're currently developing and working on that were really tailored to help researchers, engineers, clinicians, nurses to help the right piece of information at the right time, and also to interact with each other. And increasingly, these are becoming interactive platforms. So we have 5 main customer segments: clinicians, researchers, governments, pharmaceutical companies, but I should say actually companies as a whole, because there are also, we have customers in, say, the food industry or the oil and gas industry. In nursing, our main program is in students. So we have an extensive program of nursing education. The companies, we really are looking for integration of their proprietary data with the data that is available publicly and through Elsevier. With governments, we're also looking at, for instance, identifying the outcomes of funding, the outcomes of research, what are impacts that research is making, and also what type of research should you invest in. With researchers, we're looking, of course, we publish their work. They are our editors, they are our readers, they are our reviewers. We're very closely enmeshed within the researcher workflow. We also have a series of products where we support researchers to store their research data. So even before they publish their paper, to store the data, we have an entire offering that is about open access to research data. And clinicians, as we said, we're developing a whole host of products where we offer the right type of information at the right moment for the right person. So just a few numbers. Our customers, there is a predicted spend of 1.9 tera trillion dollars in research. Now, this is an old slide, and I'd love to update it because this is 2016. But in any case, one of the big things that is happening, of course, is that research is increasing hugely. Researchers, however, lack the tools they need to be effective. So it is one of the things that's happening in research, and that's being generally called out, is the idea of a reproducibility crisis. Often because of the pipeline way that science publishing happens, it's very difficult for researchers to check or reuse each other's data. And you can imagine a world in which all data could be reusable and could be shared and reused in a good way, particularly for data scientists. This is, of course, essential. So how do you get to a world where data is shared in a proper way? How do you think of incentives that drive that type of behavior? How do you build infrastructures together with corporate or government or institutional databases and repositories, together with libraries who are doing a lot of work on this, to build infrastructures to allow research data to be shared in a different way? Drugs are very expensive to develop, and only 1 in 20 drugs that is investigated ever gets to market. So how do you make that pipeline shorter? Of course, the whole COVID pandemic has shown us that there are some miracles that are possible. There was, if you think of the amount of information that went into developing the current COVID vaccine, it's absolutely incredible if you go back to the basic science. So how can we build infrastructures that make that trajectory even quicker? And moving forward to that, health providers cannot save lives without having the right information. This is a pretty disheartening statistic, frankly. The third largest cause of death is medical error. I find that pretty shocking. But so how can we enable healthcare providers to know what is the right treatment in a certain situation? How can we warn them if there's a chance of something going wrong? And again, how do we build information systems? And this is all driven by data science that allow research, that allow clinicians to not make errors and to choose the right treatment for every patient. So a bit about our relationship with artificial intelligence. Now, I'm going to use artificial intelligence and data science a little bit interchangeably. Of course, they're different things. But as data scientists, we think you might be interested in probably all of these journals, but mostly probably for some of you, maybe more the artificial intelligence ones. For others, maybe you're more interested on the data side of things by itself. But these are some of our journals, and of course, most of our journals are open access at this point. I think it's about a third of all content is available in open access, but also the ones that are not. Of course, Columbia has a Science Direct subscription, so you should be able to go to Science Direct and find, just peruse to your leisure any of these journals. We also have quite some work that we're doing on making both data and software available with the journal article. We have a journal called Software X, where we actually encourage the publishing of software, linking it back to research data, and linking it to any paper or work about that data, getting back to that earlier issue of reproducibility. We would love to build an environment where you can transparently see what someone has done, not just written in their paper, but also the software they wrote. How did they write it? Why did they write it in that way? Can you access it? And can you see their data inputs and outputs as well? So we collaborate a lot in AI research. On the right is the website that it says at the bottom, researchcollaborations.elsevier.com. We have over 90 research collaborations with top universities in the world. A lot of them in the US, a lot of them in Europe, and we work together with them on all sorts of solutions that can support our products and that can make our customers' lives better. And it's a very wide-ranging range of topics. As an example, in Amsterdam, we have set up a lab that is an AI research lab that we set on jointly with the University of Amsterdam and the Free University and the CWI, which is one of the, those are the 3 AI AI institutes in Amsterdam. There are 3 research leaders who are at the institutions, and then there are correspondingly 3 research leaders at Elsevier. We have postdocs and PhDs who focus on topics to do with knowledge graphs, information retrieval, question answering. George is one of the pivotal people who is on the call and who will speak next. So if you have any questions about exactly what the Discovery Lab is doing, please feel free to check it out. There's also a link below. And what we're really learning is how can we have a synergistic collaboration with the university, where on the one hand, the research they are doing is state-of-the-art, top-notch, publishable in high-quality journals. We had already 2 awards for best research task and best paper in the past year at top-notch AI conferences from people at the Discovery Lab. So we're very happy to say that the research is really top-notch, while at the same time being of interest to the business. So what we're really working on understanding is how do you mesh business interest with research interest in a way that works for both parties. And I'd say that, so that's the work that my group focuses on, and this is something where we'd love to work more also with Columbia to explore, and I think the collaboration we have with the students here today is an example of such a collaboration. Then just to talk a bit more about AI, we have a very active group that is looking at bias in AI and ethics in AI. We're actually starting up a large program where we're looking at, is the AI that we use inside the company transparent? Is it debiased? We are developing a series of checklists, and we have a set of principles which are given on the right. And we're really working on developing a way that we not just support these principles in all the AI that we develop internally, but also that in all the work we do with our external partners, that these principles are first and foremost. As an example, we're embarking on a project in the European Union to see if we can look at how do you debias job advertisements. Are there ways to develop automatic tools supported by natural language processing so that job ads are unbiased? And can we spot any bias that is there? We then lastly employ a lot of data scientists and AI researchers. We have over 200 data scientists. We have in total 7,500 employees. We serve customers in over 180 countries. And here's a map of the Elsevier offices around the globe. There are actually more. So I'm missing a couple of dots in the US. We have quite a large office. So we have a large office in Philadelphia. We have an office in New York, Ohio, San Diego, Vancouver, Toronto. You know, there almost are no places where Elsevier employees don't work. And of course, in the current pandemic, we have been working from home, but also I've been working, for instance, from the forest in Vermont for the past 11 years. So Elsevier is also a place where it's very, very good and possible to work from home while being actively involved in all sorts of projects. We're extremely global. So when the pandemic hit, of course, we all started to work from home, and we realized that we were actually pretty lucky as an industry because we were already so used to working in global teams that it was very common for us to set up Zoom meetings where 1 or 2 people were not in the room, or where the majority of people were online. So one of the great things I think of working for Elsevier, and as I said, I've worked here since 1988, when probably the majority of you weren't even born, is that you work with really wonderful, interesting people who have backgrounds in all sorts of science and technology. And I honestly wouldn't say that if it wasn't true, but just the people that you meet at Elsevier is, to me, one of the greatest things of working here. You meet people with backgrounds in every single possible field of medicine and research, and they're all excited by, and they're all excited by providing better ways of accessing content to researchers, to doctors, to engineers. Just to show you that we do artificial intelligence research as part of our job. Concurrently with today's session, we're actually, and the reason Magdalena was joining us a moment later was we have a search summit that is internal to Elsevier. So Elsevier researchers are talking about topics that they are doing in terms of their research. And on the right are just a couple of topics that I randomly cut and pasted from half a day of the search summit. So as you see, these are all topics that are just exciting research topics. We encourage people to continue research, to publish, to go to conferences, to keep learning, and to ensure that the work they're doing for the company is still relevant research. So that was a bit of an introduction, and I'll now hand it over to George, who can maybe introduce himself. Thank you.
Many thanks, Anita. Hi, everyone. I'm Georgios Tsatsaronis. I'm Vice President Data Science in the Operations Division of Elsevier. And Jessica and Alexis and everyone in the call, really many thanks for having us here today. It is really a great privilege being here and talking a bit about what we do with AI in Elsevier. In the next 10 or 15 minutes or so, what I would like to do is to present you some examples of how we are actually applying artificial intelligence. And in our context here, when we are talking about AI, we are more precisely talking about natural language processing in combination with advanced machine learning techniques, often because most of our data and content is text, but not always. And I have a few applications here that I would like to show you. The first example I want to bring, and all these are, by the way, recent projects, is an example from the period of the pandemic that we are into right now. So last year, when the pandemic first broke out, one of the first things we wanted to do as Elsevier was to actually design and develop a reliable system, machine learning system, that could actually very accurately detect which of the literature on the first place is what we would call core COVID-19 related articles, and which of the, and so that we can actually help accelerate, first of all, the production of these articles, the review process, whatever stage they are into, but also to apply it to all other types of articles and help the community. And I'm sure you're aware there is a dataset called Core19 by Allen AI, and there, of course, a lot Elsevier has contributed, the same with other publishers, actually. So a second motivation was to have a reliable mechanism to filter even that same Core19 dataset, which, as it stands, it's actually using a simple query-based mechanism in order to attract from PubMed what seems to be the case of core COVID-19 articles. So a lot of false positives there, and even further, some false negatives as well that have evaded the Core19. So last April, we started this thinking of designing this machine learning classifier. In our case, it's a BioBird fine-tuned machine learning model that has been gradually built based on deep active learning. And we used experts from across our organization, but also external experts in order to validate stage by stage the various different articles that they were coming in, and to gradually build confidence to the classifier, also especially around the boundary decision points. In short, the classifier that we built together with our production capability of enriching and linking metadata of articles, even third party, and disambiguating who are the authors, who are the affiliations, what are the precise, accurate metadata of these COVID-19 articles, has been, together with the World Health Organization, we have started a great collaboration. And to the best of my knowledge, Elsevier is the only private organization that WHO collaborates with for the purpose of COVID-19. And we have been week to week for a bit more than a year even now. We have been providing these services absolutely with all our heart to WHO, and have helped them curate the COVID-19 search database that you see there on the right. So basically, this is just one example of how machine learning has been put into place, has led to a solution that can reliably distinguish what is really important core for COVID-19 and to prioritize that and to put it in external databases such as WHO, CORD, and so on. If we go to the next slide, Anita. This next example is more a bit towards even further our core abilities in natural language processing, where we have a lot of use cases in the organization. And this specific use case is around Science Direct. Anita mentioned this is one of our engines where we primarily index the articles that are published by Elsevier, both open access and everything else. And one of the use cases in this context has been, you've bumped, I'm sure, a lot of times into this situation where as you read an article, you just come to a term and it strikes you and you say, I've seen that term, but what exactly it is, I can't really recall, right? And often what you do is you start looking around, even Googling around, to remember a bit, what is this disease, what is this protein, what is this term that you have seen somewhere. So the principle of this business use case that we call Science Direct topic pages, and they are publicly available, is exactly based on these needs to build automatically wiki-like or Wikipedia-like pages that describe the major scientific concepts that anyone can find in the literature. We are talking about more than 400,000 scientific concepts and respective pages we have created. And these pages, an example you can see here on the right, have been created automatically using NLP and of course machine learning within that. And what are the elements in this page? First of all, for every scientific concept, we extract the definition from our books and our journal content. So for example, here you see for encephalitis. Then we extract all the related terms automatically, in this case related to this disorder. And last but not least, we extract what we believe or our algorithms have been trained to deem as the most representative or relevant either book chapters or journal articles on that topic. And this has, in conjunction with our ability to link these terms from within Science Direct to the topic pages, has helped a lot the experience of our readers. So as they go through, they bump into a term, let's say encephalitis, they click, and directly they have this beautiful topic page, which I would describe as opposed to Wikipedia. Wikipedia can be seen as wisdom of crowds. This one could be seen in one way as wisdom of experts, as the content is coming directly from expert books, from expert journals, from expert content, right? So it's not really socializing. The science is literally just selecting the top things that we find in expert content. So this is, I think, a nice, also interesting use case, and these pages are publicly available if you search around for Elsevier Science Direct topic pages. This is one example of encephalitis. There are more than 350,000 of those. If we go to the next application, Anita, many thanks. So Anita mentioned in the introduction, basically our focus is in three major pillars: research, health sciences, and life sciences, right? These are primarily the communities we serve, which almost covers practically every aspect of research. And here is an example from the space of bioinformatics, and especially from the combination of one of our knowledge graphs, which we call Intellect, and it's basically a very big triple store or knowledge graph with extracted information around proteins, around diseases, around interactions between drugs, around interactions between drugs and targets, and all the other information you would need as a basis for bioinformatics applications. And here is an example of how we have actually utilized that infrastructure in collaboration with a few of our research partners. Anita mentioned we have quite a lot of them from across the different industry sectors. In this case, to basically computationally predict what would be some good drug candidates, in this case for chronic pancreatitis. And as you know, this is quite an interesting case because pancreatitis, often early onset symptoms are very related to, or could be seen also as early symptoms for pancreatic cancer. The same way prostatitis symptoms can be seen also as early onset of prostate cancer, and so on. So there are a lot of proteins here that play important role, and targets that are very closely related also to other types of disorders. So therefore, the difficulty also of understanding how you can repurpose drugs for something like this. And computationally, what we have achieved here is with our partners, we have managed to find really 4 great drug candidates for chronic pancreatitis. And this is also something that is currently being investigated further by the different partners on what would be the value of that, whether it's worth going into some design phase or some in vitro experimentation or later on some clinical trials. So, but that's a very nice example of how the modern Elsevier organization is now able, together with research partners, put together the knowledge we can extract from heterogeneous types of content, including our own primary and other third-party content, to do applications like this. If we go to the next slide, Anita, thank you.
No, I'm sorry, George. I went over time, but this was also already 10 minutes. So just want to give you a quick time check.
Very good.
Thanks.
So in the interest of time, I think what I'll do just a very quick mention on this, and then I'll just go through the coloring. So maybe I need another 3 or 4 minutes, and I apologize if I went a bit over time on that matter.
I did too. I'm sorry. We're too excited.
Indeed. So in this so the last application I want to show just briefly is an initiative we started almost 3 years ago, and it was an effort to actually apply a combination of unsupervised machine learning, semi-supervised and supervised machine learning in order to map the field of artificial intelligence. And very briefly, the result of this has been a report, right? The artificial intelligence report that we update yearly. And that same report has also been used by various different important stakeholders around the globe, including government agencies, to comment on how the field is going, how the field is growing, what are the important new trending areas, and so on. So very interesting work, but we don't have the time to go into the technical details of how we achieved that, just an example. I will need just 2 more minutes to, well, this is not really the deep dive we were envisaging to be. I would say, let's say, a summary of a deep dive on one important application we have been working recently that I think it will be relevant to the audience here. And it's about how we can actually help with our abilities and skills, helping the community to understand the value of data sets, how are data sets used in research publications, and how we can help also governmental agencies, research centers, universities understand this wider landscape of dataset usage, utilization, and impact in scientific publications. So we work together with the Coleridge Initiative. It's based out of US. It's a not-for-profit organization that has exactly this mission. And we collaborate with them very gladly to do what you see on the screen, to basically come up with data science solutions that can help us identify where are data sets mentioned, in which context, and then on top of that, to be able to provide very clear analytics on the impact of this data set. In short, there was a Kaggle competition that was organized, and in the next few slides, I'm going to very briefly show you the 3 winning models of that Kaggle competition. Anita, we can go maybe to the next slide. So 3 models that were the winners of this among the many submitted are very high performance. We have actually, they are open source, and of course, in collaboration with the actual people behind these models, we have started applying them more widely in a lot of content, including primary articles in Elsevier, but also Scopus articles and any other content you can imagine on publications. The first model is a very interesting one. I know there is a lot of information here. Very briefly, the first model is actually a transformer-based model, actually a combination of a few transformers. And the whole principle is that in order to fine-tune that transformer to recognize when there is a mention of dataset, instead of taking the typical NER fine-tuning of BERT methodology, the authors here have done something really clever. They have assumed that you can split your training set into what they call support set, which is your actually truly labeled, gold labeled set. And also, you can also surface what they call query set here. Some mentions that are good candidates of what could be a mentioned dataset mentioned entity. And you can do a shared training with a shared BERT model so that you can split the similarity of these things between what we would call the label actually embedding part of the query set, and to measure the similarity of that with the mask embedding of the support set, but also the context. So if you think about it, a sentence with a label inside it, you can actually distinguish the embedding vector for the actual label and the embedding vector for the remaining of the text, for the remaining of the sentence. And the idea here is do a metric learning using this notion, so split how the label is represented and how its context is represented, and learn the actual similarity. So that is extremely useful also for semi-supervised learning, by the way, and also for active learning as well. Let's move to the second model. The second model.
Yeah, and we do really want to leave enough question time for Kinga and Magdalena. So should probably.
We then summarize the second. The second and the third model are quite more simple, using some regex patterns and some more rule-based approaches. So let's just go to the results, perhaps directly, Anita. So in short, we applied these models into a wide corpus of 20,000 articles. You can see here how the different models, the number of data sets in 20K articles that they have recognized, and some differences in unique and overlaps. Maybe next slide, Anita, and apologies for the rush. So here you can see a bit of analytics we can do on top of that. That is very helpful, right? So you can see per year the mentioning of which are the data sets mentioned, in which domains, right? And if we go to the final view, it's even more informative. This is the one. So here you can see literally each data set in which domains here are represented as colors is used. So it shows you a bit of the impact, right? So if you take the first data set, a very big one on health, you can see it's used in a variety of domains and it's used really heavily, right? Only in this corpus, really a large number of times has been mentioned and used. So I'm going to actually stop here because we do need to leave some time for questions and to leave some time for discussion with Kinga and Magdalena. Anita, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And sorry to rush you. And I was also too slow. But I would love to, and we do have a question in the chat, but I would love to first move over to Kinga and Magdalena, and I'll actually stop sharing because I think we can just see each other ourselves. If you could introduce yourself, Kinga and Magdalena, that'd be really great.
Do you want to start, Kinga?
Go ahead.
Okay, so my name is Magdalena. Originally, I studied genetics in the UK. I worked in big pharma for a year and in biotech for a year as part of research and development, but was really fascinated by what's happening at the intersection of data science and the life sciences. So I quit my job. I enrolled in a Masters of Data Science in Amsterdam, changed country as well. Yeah, and was really fortunate to meet my supervisors at Elsevier at the thesis fair that we were holding. And I just had, I just really already had a great impression that they would be able to, support me with a great project, which they did. So then I was even happier then that I could stay on as a full-time employee.
Yeah, so now I will tell you a bit about myself. So my name is Kinga. Before doing data science at University of Amsterdam together with Magdalena, I was doing mathematics in Poland, in Warsaw. And I was also working as a data analyst and database developer. And then I figured that would be nice to do more of a predictive modeling with data. And this is why I selected data science. So then, and before starting at Elsevier, I was doing my master thesis project, also at Elsevier. And I really enjoyed it. I mean, it was great 3 months for me because then I get to know a lot of technology. My supervisors, they were great. And I think that was also a thing that made me stay here because I also knew that people are just excellent. Yeah, so that's.
Thanks so much. So we wanted to allow, and I kind of rushed poor George through, but we wanted to allow time for everyone to ask questions. But maybe to kick it off, if George and I could ask the two of you a couple of questions, Kinga and Magdalena. And my first question is very simple. What are you working on right now? I'm just interested to know if what you're doing is indeed data science. Was it any of the projects that we described already, or are you working on a separate project? It'd just be great to hear.
I think you mentioned that project. I'm currently working on Reaxys, and what's actually really interesting, I'm working on image classification. So we want to classify whether something is a chemical compound or not. And before that, I was working, like during my internship, over NLP things. So this is also nice that I had the opportunity to to change a bit scope of my expertise for now.
That's really nice. I'm working now on another Elsevier product, Embase, and we're working on improving the indexing of articles there and how different articles are classified according to their topics, basically to improve the search experience of users with the product. Yeah, and following your lead, Kinga, for my thesis, I was focusing on finding errors in knowledge graphs using knowledge graph embedding. So also a little bit of a jump.
So you've gotten the chance to explore different techniques. George, do you want to ask the next question?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, one question is, I would ask anyone actually for that matter that joins a company as a data scientist is, you know, to what extent is the current environment in Elsevier, from your perception, right, motivating you to, you know, to follow the state of the art, to apply cutting research in your day-to-day business, to experiment, and at the end, you know, do you have all you need, and do you have the freedom and the motivation you need to really go to the next level and really apply the latest in whatever you're doing? I think that's a fair question to any data scientist for any organization, actually.
Okay, I can start. So maybe we can distinguish here two things. So one is whether we have a place that we can learn from, and the second, whether we can actually apply it. So for me, when it comes to application of some state-of-the-art things, actually recently I had the chance to do it. So that was also really interesting, that my project allowed me to implement some new optimization techniques and also to explore different approaches for training that image classification model. So that was super interesting. And the other thing is whether we have a place from where to learn. And I think we do have. For example, we have these data science demos that are every 2 weeks at our company. So then people from all of the data science community, they have a chance to show their ideas, what they're learning, like what they learned and what they're currently work on. So this is also a nice place to get inspired. What can you do within your projects?
Yeah, fully agree, Kinga. And yeah, for me, definitely you can, there's motivation, of course, to keep up with the state of the art, and there's the space to do so, let's say in development days or all lectures. And in terms of, yeah, in terms of work, because we're working on a proof of concept with a very tight deadline, it's actually interesting for me to see, okay, we apply for some things very simple approaches, like for entity recognition, we might use a dictionary-based approach to get to a certain level. Then from then on, we supplement that with machine learning models, and then maybe deep learning for cases that are most difficult. So I think it's interesting also to see how it connects to, okay, what's the simplest way I can solve the problem? And then what portion of challenges will I need to use state-of-the-art for?
Great. I wanted to pause for a minute because I think we have 10 more minutes. So Jessica, I was wondering if there were questions from your side or from the audience.
We did receive one question from one of the students, and I believe George responded to it. The definition extraction part of the snippet chapter selection in the classified task, but combine the learning to rank methodology, the relevant concepts. Oh, this is George's answer. I apologize.
I think that was already answered.
Yeah. So we have some students joining in. We have a wave of students that have been joining in. So I know that Magdalena and Kinga spoke a little bit about their experience at Elsevier. Sometimes our students ask, what are the recommended courses or skill sets, or what would an ideal candidate at Elsevier come in prepared with? Yeah.
Maybe if Kinga and Magdalena, if you could say briefly, if there is, now that you have this job, is there anything that you've learned while you were still a student that you would, if you were to be able to go back to your younger self, you would say, definitely take that class or definitely do that thing? Any thoughts? I think that's a great question.
I mean, machine learning and NLP courses, information retrieval, those were courses that were very relevant, I think, to both of what we are doing. I think programming experience always helps. Even when you're not doing machine learning, it will always be helpful in getting things done efficiently.
Yes, I agree. So if you, sorry.
No, I was just asking you.
No, I just wanted to add to that, if you have an opportunity to have some course with projects, so with applying actually this machine learning and data science concept, then you should definitely go for it, because then this is an experience that is really rewarding in the end.
I'm thinking also of more minor things, but sometimes there are other things that working with many different files that you've not been file processing of many different types of files, or SQL queries. Maybe you didn't have experience with that precisely, but in my experience, you can always find someone to help you with that and learn quickly on the job with the more minor things.
George, is there anything in particular that you are looking for when you're hiring new people? And there's also a question whether we are hiring data scientists in the US. And the short answer to that is yes. In fact, if you just Google Elsevier data science jobs near me, there are quite a few jobs there. And if you are ready, if you're done with your education, it's always a possibility to send in your resume, and certainly George and myself can forward any resumes to jobs that might be open. But just over to you, George, because I think no one's hired more data scientists at Elsevier than you have. So what do you look for in a candidate, and what are things that you really think would be really good for people to focus on?
Now, that's a great question. So first, let me tell you, Anita, that for what it matters is it's not so much the path the person has taken so far in their career to get where they are. It's more about the why and the passion and the motivation they have to engage with the field of data science, right? So it was also mentioned in the chat, a lot of data scientists, like we have Kinga here, start originally from another field, right? And if you think about it, some of the previous generation data scientists or earlier database people or IR people, that generation was primarily physicists, mathematicians that suddenly entered into the field. And more recently, you see a lot more biologists, a lot more people from medicine, from biology, from other types of sciences to do the transition if they have a passion for it. So for me, the most important is if people are really into looking at data and trying to understand data, want to go deeper into what this data means and what information we can extract from them. How can we link it across to make sense and to be able to extract knowledge and extract information? If this is your passion, come to us, please. Right? I think this is the most important property. And it's not so much, of course, the background is important. Of course, you have to have some technical skills, but in my opinion, these skills one can obtain in a certain period of time. It's not so difficult. It's more about the mentality and your talent and passion to work with data.
Yeah. And I think I'd like to talk for a second about these question, even though Magdalena and Kinga have more experience with that recently. How do you select a master's in data science? I've also noticed that there are so many institutions that are offering masters in data science at the moment. And just from where I'm sitting, what I'm seeing, where people are coming to us from, these are institutions that not just offer the coursework, but they really offer really good projects. So I would say if there's a university that really teaches you to work collaboratively, and if at all possible, to work together with external parties, because a lot of this data science really thrives in an environment where there is a whole set of data that you have to parse, you have to come to an understanding. Like Magdalena said, maybe it starts in a very simplistic way. Maybe it doesn't start with the most complicated, neural models, but you're willing to just attack it. So if the university has a practical program that allows you to really develop those types of skills, from where I'm sitting, that would be an absolute benefit. But again, handing to Magdalena and Kinga, how did you guys choose for the programs you were in?
Kinga, do you want to start?
You can go first.
I don't really have a very inspirational answer for that one. I just know that I was in the UK for 5 years and I was so tired of the weather there, and I just knew that I needed a change. I moved to the Netherlands originally to start working here. And then I really, I kind of fell in love with Amsterdam. I wanted to stay here. So then I chose the university based on the course. But yeah, it was in part location based also.
Yeah, for me, mostly as well, because then I visited Netherlands before I came here a couple of times and I really like it. But then I also did some just research within the Netherlands, how the university stands. So like, I also looked briefly into syllabus, but then, yeah, it was mostly in regards to the city, to be honest.
Great. I think there's one last, so 2 questions. One is if we do sponsorships. I'm not exactly sure what that question means. If you mean, we do projects, we do research collaborations with universities, and sometimes as part of those we hire PhDs or postdocs mostly.
And we
yeah.
also do internships, Anita, right? So for example, if by
Yes.
sponsorship here, in the context of is Elsevier actually having some programs via which we can bring on board some scientists. I think the most typical example is our research collaborations, right? That we have such a plethora of those to give you some examples, but also our internship programs, right? So and also our PhD exchange programs, right? Often with universities, we say, okay, if we have some common ground for research, maybe the university is willing or interested to send over, I don't know, for 6 months or for some period of time, a PhD researcher or either student or postdoctoral researcher, and we can have the researcher gladly to host the person and to do research with them and so on. And then in return, we might visit for some, taking up some of the courses, maybe in a master's, or some invited lecture, or organizing a challenge. So there are a lot of different things we can do. But I think the easiest way to start actually thinking about that is to consider an internship, right? Because it's directly discussable, and we can also find always opportunities for for people to join us in that sense.
Great. And I love the conversation about the weather. Yeah, I lived in New York for a while and I absolutely loved it. So just a thought, but absolutely. And I just wanted to add to the earlier point, we are a science publisher, but we love to change and improve science publishing. So any thoughts you have as a student or as a participant or as somebody who's published or is looking at publishing, for Elsevier, if you're interested in joining Elsevier in particular, any thoughts you have on the process of sharing your science, to me, that would be a huge pre. We're really looking for better ways to publish science. I think we're at time, so I wanted to hand over back to Jessica. Thank you so much, Kinga and Magdalena, for joining us.
Thank you so much. If you have any follow-up questions for our Elsevier panel, please make sure to send them over to us. Anita said she would send over the deck, correct? And if you have any questions or follow-up, please let us know. Thank you so much to the Elsevier team for coming and sharing so much with us today. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much for participating in our capstone project this semester. We're excited to see what that looks like at the end of the semester. And hopefully our students have a better idea of what it is to be a data scientist at Elsevier. Thank you so much, everybody.
The pleasure
Thank you
has been
so
all
much.
ours. Many thanks, Jessica. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.